screen record on Zoom?
I don't know. I don't want to do Zoom. Okay, hopefully this works. Sorry, love.
How are they going to know to get on the new one?
That's what I just posted on Twitter
Yeah,
and right here.
chat.
Here's the new YouTube link. The other one stopped. So there's 9 people on already.
Oh.
Yeah. Guys, I don't know what happened. I got banned. Nate, what happened? That was ridiculous. It said I violated the community standards. I'm an upstanding guy. Hi, thank you for coming back. Thank you for coming back. Do you guys have any idea what happened? Is it because I named it APWH? Shoot. That was terrible. I was right in the middle of talking. It said you violated. So yeah, it said I violated the community guidelines. I got an email from it too. I'm outraged. Flip's life kind of suspicious. Maybe they don't like tea. Good point, John. Maybe they don't like tea. Oh, maybe I should. I don't know. It's the mug that I held up. That's stupid. That's definitely not it. Okay. So let's get into it. I see we only have 12 people, 13 people right now. That number is probably going to fluctuate throughout this time. Heimler had like 7,000 people, which was fantastic. And we've got 14. So, yeah, guys, the entire time, let's make sure that we're posting our questions in the chat. Please keep it friendly. Try to, and listen, I don't care if you guys want to vent. Tell me your frustrations. Tell me what you're maybe worried about or anything along those lines. But yeah, I mean, anything kind of goes in this. Okay. DBQ results are going to come in, Nate. Probably July, I would say. The normal, the regular exam usually the kids get those scores back in like July 5th or July 6th. Okay, so that's, I think, probably what we can expect. I'm grading this here. I don't know if I told anybody. I have to update my computer because of it. I think I'm getting an Airbook or something like that. MacBook Air. Thank you. MacBook Air. So don't even know the name of it. I'm getting an Airbook. So I have to do that because the system requires me to have something updated. So yeah, I don't know, Alexa, if it'll be faster. Cameron, if you're in a if you're just a kind of a regular student going through the motions, like you're not in ECA, this doesn't impact you in any shape or form. If you're in ECA and you do not get a 3 or higher, then you have to take a class similar to this next year. It's usually held after school on Wednesdays. It's with me, and it's for 2 semesters, okay? That's what you have to do to maintain eligibility in the ECA program if you don't get a 3 or higher, okay? Aiden, I believe I did, and just put the comments back in the document. If not, I'll be sure to get to it. The only one I think I have to do right now is Johnny Walsh and Jack's second attempt. So I'll do that one as well. No, you do not retake the test. No. Good question, Cameron. If you're ECA and you do not pass this exam, you do not have to retake the you do not have to take the exam again. You don't have to take AP World History again. You take 2 Brookdale level classes. They're very similar to what we cover in AP World, but I'm going to be honest with you, it's a lot less stringent. Okay. Yeah, Jaden, if you think you have time to and you want to redo it, try again, try any part of it, go ahead and do that. I don't have a life tonight anyway, so I'll be sure to get those back to you guys. Okay, I want to start real quick, everybody, with telling you that I think the DBQ will most likely be on periods. I really, if I had to be broad with it, I'd say 4 through 6. And that's transoceanic interconnections, revolutions, consequences of industrialization. If I had to be really particular, I would say either units 5 or 6. That's revolutions and consequences of industrialization. That's roughly, if I think it's 5 and 6, that's roughly 1750 to 1900. Okay, 1750 being the start of the Industrial Revolution. and 1900 being the cap to that. They cannot ask you any question beyond that point. Transoceanic connections, interconnections, just kind of like the origins of globalization and early European colonization, right? The world kind of getting a smaller place, right? And that's really where we left off before we went on quarantine in classroom, was Europe's quote unquote age of discovery, where you had the collapse of the Mongol dynasties in the mid 1300s across Eurasia, a breakdown in Silk Road trade, the rise of the gunpowder Islamic empires, and then Christian Western Europe basically saying, hey, we need to find another way to our traditional sources of East Asian luxury goods, silks, spices, etc. And that's what jumpstarts the age of discovery. That's where I think, if they're going to go back far enough, this DBQ will start. So I want to talk themes for a second, and let me answer these two questions. Aiden, I know I did them, but give me a second and we'll, we can talk after this session. Is it true that they're somehow trying to bind the 10-point rubric back into the original 5 points it used to do, kind of like a conversion of points? Possibly. Nobody knows what's going to go on with scoring. As of right now, it's all speculation. I wouldn't fall for any of it. Okay, they're just, that they're going to do their best to make it as fair as possible. That's all I can say right now. Okay. So yeah, I want to make sure you guys, when you get a question, that's talking, like if we run through our themes, right, we've got our, six historical themes, politics, economics, culture, society, human interaction with the environment, human interaction with the environment, and technology and innovation. So I would just make sure, if I were you guys, and we can rattle off a few real quick. If you see something, right, like let's do social real quick. If you see something that's about like family, children, women's roles in society, that's a hot topic in AP World History that can absolutely be, on there. That's going to be social. Okay. I gave you that nice spice chart in the beginning of the year. Definitely check that out. Just make sure you know that when you see social systems or social structures, you know what's fair game to talk about, right? If you see something along the lines of political, it's going to be military, conflict, state building, expansion, forms of government, right? If you're looking at a question and it has something to do with culture, it's going to be ideas, religions, etc. Right? If it's going to be economic systems, right, we're talking about how a society is organized economically. Socialism, communism, capitalism, mercantilism, right, feudalism, right, how society organizes itself. And then humans' interaction with the environment, right, disease, population, demography, how humans are constantly interacting with their environment. And then technology and innovation speaks for itself, right? If you look at like some of the tech and innovation we talked about before we left for quarantine, we're talking about, lateen sails, dhow ships, caravels, carracks, compasses, right? Printing press. Those are the technologies. Okay. So just make sure you have those themes on lock. Next, I just want to make sure you remember, and I have this written out in that document that I've had going all day. Okay. I'm not going to mess around with any screen sharing or anything along those lines. But I had the DBQ practice document, open all day. And that was essentially all DBQ focused. So I want you to remember, I have this in kind of big bolded letters at the top of the page. Remember that every DBQ question, no exception, has to be tied to the historical thinking skills. What are they? Type them out in the chat. What are those historical thinking skills? Three C's, if you can't remember this, 3 C's. Every single DBQ question has to be tied to this. Come on, somebody type them out. Come on. Thank you very much. Okay, so we've got continuity and changes over time. Pat Lane coming in there, that's CCOT. Continuities, things that stay the same in a given time period, and changes, things that change in a given time period. Okay. Comparison, right? So we had CCOT and then comparison. So comparing something using similarities or differences. Okay. Similarities or differences. And then finally, causation. And the two skills with causation are understanding the relationship between cause and effect. Okay. Your DBQ has to focus on one of those skills, right? Has to include a theme. Okay, there's certain the DBQ has to give you a time. The DBQ has to give you a geographic area. Okay, so that's what you know. That's what you can expect. Okay, it's the unknown that causes us a little bit of fear and anxiety, right? What exactly is the subject going to be? You'll find out tomorrow at roughly 2 p.m. Okay, so we've got themes, right? We've got our historical thinking skills. And then by now, I'm assuming I've had the modified DBQ 10-point rubric posted to Classroom for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks now. So why don't we take a pause here? Okay, we'll pause here. Please, right now, if you have it, I'm going to go through my little stack of papers right now. If you have it printed out, which you probably should, go ahead and get this guy out. Or at least open up a screen that, this is on Google Classroom. At least open up a screen that gets you there. Okay. And make sure right now you as an individual know exactly where your points are coming from and what you have to do to earn those points. Just take a couple seconds. And right now, if you have any questions about any little thing on that rubric, right? Anything maybe that I wrote in the DBQ practice document that I've had open all day, like if you have any question about why I wrote something there or would like anything broken down, let's take some time right now to make sure we understand that. Then once we finish up this brief discussion with the rubric, we can hop into some content questions on your part. If anybody has any big content, little content questions for us, like actual history stuff, right? So we need that to be successful on the outside evidence, maybe even contextualization part of the DBQ. Questions on the rubric, any part of the 10 points, where the points come from, what you have to do, where something should be in your essay, what should the essay look like. Again, I think I did a pretty good job at giving you an actual template for what your essay should look like in the Google DBQ practice today. And there goes the TIG. Cameron, what is historical context? It's background information. When you ask somebody, like, oh, okay, what's the context of your conversation, right? They want background information on it, because the more context you have, the easier it is to understand the topic at hand, right? So does it matter how long the essay is? Give me a second. No, it doesn't, essentially. But let's answer historical context first. I think if you go into that DBQ practice, right? I gave Dan Gervasio came up with a really, really good context. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, I actually posted his entire sample essay, and his first 3 to 4 sentences is really great historical context, right? No, Jaden, different historical context. Actually, I actually should ask Cameron. Let me clarify your question. Do you mean big context, or do you mean context for sourcing? Waiting for your response. Because there are two contexts for sourcing. Okay, so Cameron, you know what contextualization is, the one that has to go in the introduction. That's the background for the question, like 3 to 4 sentences that kind of sets up the paper, right? Gives a background for the topic. Sourcing, historical context, is just like, all right, what was going on in that time period that like better helps you interpret and understand the document. It's basically the same thing, except the sourcing context is just for that document that you're doing. The big context in the intro was like setting up the time period. The little context in the sourcing is just focused on that document. Like, here's a really, really good example. If you go to I have that DBQ printed out here. I think like document 2, and I did this, Cameron, in the DBQ practice. Document 2 is like, it's a Korean source. It's a bunch of people talking about how like we've got to fight the Chinese and Japanese off, like they're bad for us. We want to rule ourselves. I think this is one that I sourced using historical context. I said, and I actually used one of Heimler's prompts for it. I'm going to go to the document right now. I'll just read you. You can read this. It's on there. Document 2. I wrote this at the time this document was created, and that's a nice phrase I borrowed from Heimler. Japan had already gone through the Meiji Restoration and its industrialization process. If saying the Meiji Restoration is too much for you, you'd never remember that. Just knowing that Japan was industrializing at this time and therefore becoming an imperial power better helps you understand this document. You kind of now know that these people are threatened. These Koreans in document 2 are threatened by this imperial Japan. As a newly industrial power, Japan sought to extend its influence to the mainland of East Asia, China, and Korea. The Tonghak are simply reacting to this new threat from industrial Japan. So that's, I think, a really great example of how you would use historical context to put a document in its place. And that, I think, is I agree with Heimler. I think it's the easiest, right? But that might be a personal thing for some of you guys, Thanks for clarifying that, Cameron. There is big C and then there's little c. Jaden says, Heimler said that's the easiest, but for me, I feel like other than POV, historical context is the hardest. Oh, okay. So you're kind of like a purpose and audience type person. And I think, your document 2, maybe, when you sent me, Jaden, your sourcing practice, I think the one I did give you credit for was purpose. So, hey, if that's easy, if you think that you can nail that, stick with it. That's okay. There's no golden rule of you have to do historical context or you have to do purpose, et cetera, et cetera. You don't have to do anything. You do what you're comfortable with, okay? Jess says, how do you describe a document without summarizing it? There's really no problem with summarizing, Jess. Let me ask you a question. You don't just want to summarize it. You need to actually use it, right? You have to kind of tie it back to what you said in your thesis. This is what I'm always saying. If you have a terrible thesis, right, it's gonna be incredibly hard to tie things back to it. Okay, so I don't think there's any problem with summarizing a document. Describing and summarizing, in my mind, are almost synonyms. Like you're just talking about the document in a sentence or two. I think. Let me look at my notes real quick. I have a prompt written down. Yeah, you can say something like, if you Heimler's got a whole video on this. It's like 3 minutes long. It's just called Arguing with Docs. And he has his kids use 2 prompts. I generally don't like to do this because it makes you sound like robots. But you can simply say, like, if you're I don't know, talking about document 1 or something like that. Document 1 says, and then you describe what it says. And then your second sentence or third sentence could be, this shows that, and that's where you tie it back into your argument, right? So I think describe and summarize are okay. It's okay to do that. But just know, I had somebody ask me this before. Somebody emailed me saying, hey, how many points do you get for accurately describing? Like, let's say I just described 4 documents and like didn't even bother to use them. You get 1 point. It ain't worth a whole lot. You have to be able to use them. That's where you get that second point coming in. Okay. So just be cautious there. Jess, I hope that makes sense. Again, summarizing and describing, basically the same thing here. I'm going to be honest with you. Everybody that sent me a practice DBQ, I think I gave you all the points for describing, unless you didn't describe at least 2 documents, Aiden, if you fail the exam and have to retake a version of the class, do you have to retake the exam as well or just the class? Somebody asked that question already. You do not have to take the exam again. You don't. Okay. If you fail this exam, like you get a 1 or 2 on it and you're in ECA, that's the thing. ECA is where this matters. Okay. You're welcome, Jess. you have to retake a class, actually 2 classes with me. One in the fall semester, so from September to December of 2020, and then one in the spring semester, so January to May of 2021, after school with me. It's usually about a 3-hour class. Wednesdays after school. I don't usually keep people for 3 hours. You know what I mean? But we go through basically some similar content, and it's just kind of a safeguard way of making sure that you're still maintaining eligibility in early college academy. Okay. Aiden, does that make sense? Before I move on to Nate. Aiden, does that make sense? Yes? Okay, good. Nate, will we be able to print out the docs and have them to use on hand, or do we have to use them electronically? I'm assuming you're going to have to use them electronically. You're not going to have time to print, dude. I would not do that. I've said this a million times, right? A million times. I would absolutely. This is the document I would print. This cheat sheet that I uploaded for you guys a few weeks back, right? So while you're reading your documents, you're taking notes. Document 1, document 2, document 3, document 4, document 5. You have nice notes here so that you don't have to reference the documents constantly on the screen. You put your author, some source information, and then a little description of it. You've got an essay outline over here, and then you've got a simplified rubric right here. If you haven't printed this out, I would absolutely do so and keep it right next to you as you are writing this DBQ. Okay, Nate, does that make sense? I would definitely not waste time printing. Do you have any tips on managing your time? Yeah, Val, I think like yesterday in a live session, I was telling people, you should aim for like a 10-minute reading time, Val, give me 1 second. Jack, on Classroom, if you go to classwork, let it load, scroll down, and then go to 2020 exam help, and you'll see the last thing on there is 2020 AP World History Modern Exam. Click that, and there's going to be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 six documents meant to help you are going to come on there. This is the 2020 exam planning sheet. That's what it's labeled as. Okay? Jack, let me know if you're able to access that. It's a good one. I definitely recommend printing it out. I call it a cheat sheet. It's just kind of like a graphic organizer. Again, let me know if you're able to access that. Val, tips for managing your time. Yeah, I'm gonna write something out real quick. We've got 45 minutes. I honestly think a 10-minute reading time, which would leave you 35 minutes, and then maybe like a 5 or 6 minute planning time. 5 to 6 minute planning time, just like kind of organizing your thoughts. And you're going to be organizing your thoughts and planning while you're actually reading and taking the notes too. So that time is kind of jumbled together, and that leaves you about 29 or 30 minutes to go ahead and write this thing. You know what I mean? It's not a whole lot of time, but I think the good news is that it's only 5 documents, and one of them is guaranteed to be an image, a visual source. In the practice DBQ, right? We had the that very famous painting of the Battle of Ottawa, where Ethiopians successfully defended militarily their homeland from the invading imperialist Italian forces, right? It like gave you all the information you needed in the sourcing identification. So it was very easy, like don't spend a lot of time on that. Go right to the next text heavy source. But like these sources that for that practice DBQ I gave you, they were short. I mean, we looked at this yesterday in the live session. This is short here. That's not going to take you a whole lot of time. But again, that time that I recommend is probably like a 10, 6, 30, or 29. 10-minute read, 5, 6 minute plan, and then a 29 or 30 minute writing time. That's probably what I would do. you know. All right, what else do we have? Rubric, strategy, venting, or if you want, you can throw in some content questions too. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I hope, I saw some, I know, Nate, I saw you in Heimler's Jaden says, is it going to lock down our Chromebook and close out all of our tabs for like other classes? I don't think so, Jaden, because they're allowing you open notes and open Google searches and stuff like that. Here's my warning to you guys. I honestly wouldn't waste your time searching anything. Like maybe if you need some outside evidence, you can look at your notes or things like that, but you are not, I'm telling you right now, you are not going to have the time. Think of, if you were just listening to what my answer was to Valerie's question about planning, you have maybe a 10-minute reading, maybe a 6-minute planning, and then maybe 29 minutes to write this thing. You're not going to have time to Google search some random DBQ question that like you had no background for. So just be cautious with that. Okay. You can have your notes out. And here's what I was going to get to before. Yeah, Nate, thumbs up. I saw you in Heimler. You were asking for his toe reveal, which was really, really weird. Love that though. That was very funny. That's what I saw. I saw Cameron in there. I think, Maria in there. I think Cameron said hello to Maria. I'm not going to lie. I was hawking through the comments to see which of my students were in there. So Cameron, Maria, Nate, thumbs up. Excellent job. Yeah. Yeah, I would make sure that, what I was going to say is I was listening to Heimler's review. Listen, they were, Nate, to be fair, they were. If you are somebody who has done the presentations, the presentations that I've uploaded since we've been on quarantine, you have all of the information. If you went through and answered those questions, guys, that was all taken from your curriculum, okay? I know what I'm doing in the construction of this class, so believe me, you're set up for success. You shouldn't see any curveballs or anything along those lines. Jess, the chat was going very fast. It was like annoying and actually like hurting my eyes when I was following it. I couldn't even follow it. It was very, very bad. But I saw like C Foley real quick, and I'm like, oh, maybe that's Cameron. And then I was like, oh, it is Cameron. Cool. And she's shouting out Maria. It's great. I saw Nate because he was talking about that toe reveal thing, which that reminds me. There they are. There they are, glorious toes. Okay, that's enough of that. Let me put my sock back on. That's what I have over Heimler. He did not do a toe reveal. I did. Okay. He said there was probably going to be 5 prompts. Would that affect the class review? No, not going to affect the class review at all because nobody can guess the content. We're just going over rubric and finer points. No comments on the toes? Really? You're just going to ask a question, a logical question about the exam, Jack test? Okay, fine. That's okay. I like that. Yeah, for APWH, I know there was at least 5 prompts. The kids were very happy with them, by the way, which is a big thumbs up for us. So, Stevenson grid. Cole! I didn't even realize you were in this. Unfazed, Nate. Okay, great. Awesome. All these people I didn't know who were in the chat, like going out chiming in, I appreciate it. Jack, that's not going to ruin our review, right? There's no way anybody can guess what the topic is. So therefore, the fact there could be 15 different prompts and it's not going to matter. We don't know what they are, Pinky's out. We got to have some degree of sophistication here while doing this. Nice toes, Cameron. That's my favorite comment of the night. You're going down in AP World history. Okay. Sips intensely. I wish Brenna Goal was in this stream right now so I could do my make seagull noise. This is being recorded. I shouldn't be doing that stuff. It's just a seagull noise, though. Okay. What do we got? Let's get back to some questions. Let's get away from seagulls and toes and sophistication. Any other questions on the rubric or anything along those lines, and then we can get into some content. Summer session vibes. Yeah. Anybody? Rubric. DBQ. Long, awkward pause. Nate, 100%. I think I said this in the live review session the other day. This rubric is so much easier than the one that you had with the traditional exam. You know, that exam that was supposed to be 3 hours and 15 minutes, 55 multiple choice questions in 55 minutes, 3 SAQs in 40 minutes, LEQ, DBQ in an hour and 20 minutes or hour and 40 minutes. Like, come on, this is so much easier, right? The new, I don't know what poggers means, but I hope it's positive because the new rubric is fantastic. You had to source 3 documents in the old rubric to get 1 measly point. This time, you source 1 correctly, you get a point. You source another 1 correctly, you get a point. 2 points for sourcing 2. That's fantastic. Outside evidence, you do it once, point. Again, another point. You know, and yeah, Nate, back to your point. Yeah, you're getting 3 points for using 4 documents where you needed to use 6 documents to get those to get 2 points in the old rubric. So I love this one. I really do. And I think on my AP World History teachers Facebook chat, we were like unanimous. It's unanimous that this rubric is much more student friendly. I'll see what it's like to grade, but this is much more student friendly. Jess, what do I think are the easiest points to go for? All of them. That was creepy. Sorry. But seriously, go for everything. I'm going to be honest with you. I think I was on a Zoom call with Dan Lin, AP World History Master Extraordinaire. Kid is an absolute scholar. Okay. But I was telling him, you know, if you're not going to go for 1 point, don't go for the complexity. You know, I had a couple people telling me I was so stressed out in my last paragraph about flipping the scale. Don't worry about it. We make it out to be this big thing. It's like the unicorn point anyway. I feel like readers don't, you never see it. That's what I mean by unicorn point. Readers don't like to award it. I've given you a really easy way to obtain it, but it is a lot of work. And so, to kind of flip Jess's question around, the hardest point, I think, is complexity, followed by outside evidence. I think the easiest 3 points to get, Jess, let me answer your question now. I'll stop being an idiot. Dan, I didn't know you were in this chat. I don't know. I just like not paying attention who's in the chat. Yes, I would. You are a scholar, buddy. More so. You're a little lazy maybe sometimes, but you're definitely a scholar. And please know I think very highly of you. So I think the 3 easiest points to get: context, thesis, description of documents. You can describe 2 documents, whoop-de-doo, you get a point. A thesis that, like, guys, seriously, the thesis statements that the College Board accepts sometimes. The other scholars here as well, Danny G, who wrote that amazing DBQ before. That was fantastic. What would be the best place to look for outside evidence? Do you mean like... Hold on, let me get back to Jess's point, and then I'll go back to Danny G, who I've just decided to call Danny G now. I don't know why. Context, thesis, document, description. The thesis statements that the College Board accepts sometimes are lame. Like, you guys can go to that 2019 DBQ, and like the one that was graded really poorly, the one that got the 2. If you need to know how to access this, you let me know. But the one that got a 2, like, you got a point for thesis, and the thesis is awful. Like, they take a lot. And your context, 3 to 4 sentences of general background information. Excuse me. That's my Thai food coming back up. I'm really sorry. Thailand, country in Southeast Asia. Fantastic. So yeah, that's what I think, Jess. I hope that makes sense to you. You're welcome, Dan Lin. So Gervasio, when you say, can you clarify for a second? What would be the best place to look for outside evidence? Probably like a 7-Eleven. Quick check. I'm losing it, guys. I'm really losing it. Nobody's laughing at that. Where can you find your outside evidence? 7-Eleven, quick check. Come on, give me some form of love. Give me another thumbs up here. I've got 3. You guys are trying to be all serious. No, Thailand isn't the only country not to get. What does LI mean? I'm so not like YouTube savvy. I don't know. LI. I'm sorry, Alexa. My brother did. Oh, thanks, Emily. I appreciate it. Emily Hager, you're up. Happy to see you that you're here. That joke crossed the line. Yeah, it sure did. So when you say where are you getting outside evidence from, do you mean like where to look it up? Like if you're going to have to look something up, is that what you mean? Answer me, Daniel. Are we talking about looking up something for the? Yeah, I know for outside evidence, but are you talking about like where do we look? Like what's a good online resource? You got to give me 1 second. Hold on. I just have to be real secretive right now because we can't be talking about this right now. But if you want a really, really good source, I'm just kidding. That was meant to be funny again. Did that joke cross the line too? I was like being all shady with my hood up and stuff like that. Hopefully, maybe that made some of you guys laugh. Blake and my wife just looked at me like I had 6 heads. You're killing me, Nate. I would go to my presentations. Like, I want you to think about this, right? I did? Yes, I am. I'm not Sith. I am not Sith at all. Okay. That's my lightsaber noise, though. Okay, Braden, you're here. Yay, awesome. So I would go to my presentation, and I'm not like trying to toot my own horn, right? Because I borrowed those presentations anyway. But I want you to think about this. In the DBQ that I gave you as practice, the indigenous responses to state expansion, aka imperialism, right? If you followed my advice, remember the people who were online live for my like little DBQ review, either Saturday or like Monday, Tuesday, I actually told you what slides, like where to go to get the outside evidence. If you went there, you got perfect outside evidence for military responses to European state imperialism, New Zealand wars, and the Zulu wars of South Africa, and the Sepoy Rebellion, 1850s in India. Indian English soldiers revolting against the crown in a very violent way. So like you had that stuff right there. Boom, no need to search anything or anything. So if you know what the topic is for the presentation or what the topic is for the DBQ, you might want to just like maybe spend a minute or two, go right there, go right into that presentation that you think the content could be in, and open it up and just have it open, Dan. That would be my best answer. I would say the book, you're going to be doing a lot of this, whereas the presentations are short, concise, and most of the information is there. Does that make sense? Just Control F the presentation. Not a bad idea, Aiden. Really, really not. I really thought you were going to give me a website. Yeah, no website particularly. I think my presentations are probably your best bet. Oh, you can't Control F the presentation? This is why you guys should be familiar with them. but yeah, once you open up the DBQ, read the question quick, think to yourself, where would that be in the presentations, and then head there. Oh, there you go, Nate. You have to open the slideshow in a separate tab to Control F. Haley says you can. Have to open it with Google Slides, says Cameron. And oh, look at Emily. I can on my Mac. I've got a Mac. I can do that. Well, you know what? In about a week or two, I'm going to have a Mac too. And I'm going to get an AirBook. Yeah. No, it's the Mac Air, right? Brienne? Yeah, I know. So yeah, that's Dan. It was a good question. That's where I'd go for the outside evidence. Okay. All right. What else we have? DBQ or content. Let's start throwing some content bombs in here. If you've got questions about content, anything along those lines, let me know. And if we don't know, if I can't answer it, we'll look it up. Got anything for furthering our discussion on the DBQ or content? He was a very encouraging speech for the exam tomorrow. Yeah, at the end, Nate, for sure. So the Aztecs are generally considered, Dan, a secondary civilization. If you're looking at the precursors to the Aztecs, I really have like 3 responses for you. And then, yes, Aiden will go over mercantilism. So before the Aztecs in Mexico, I would say the Mayan city-states in the Yucatan Peninsula, the Toltec and Olmec societies of Mexico as well. These are not important. They're kind of outside the time frame of our class, but I'm going to answer your question anyway. And then, of course, the powerful, dominant city-state of Teotihuacan. Let's go ahead and try to spell that. But they're kind of precursors or primary civilizations to the secondary civilization that is the Aztec Empire. Remember, the Aztecs meet their demise in roughly 1517 when good old conquistador Hernan Cortez from Spain comes in, and with the help of natives and, smallpox and guns and horses, and steel, and generally bureaucracy the size of the moon, is able to overcome the Aztecs, kill the last king of the Aztecs, or the real king, Moctezuma, and begin Spanish domination over Central and South America, right, creating what we call New Spain. But that's essentially who came before the Aztecs. And if you're looking at, before them, you're talking hunting, gathering, nomadic and semi-nomadic groups, throughout the Mexican Peninsula and Yucatan Peninsula. Okay, but that's those would be good enough for that. And just note, I think it's important to know that a lot of these groups, I mentioned Teotihuacan, Mayans, Olmecs, Toltecs, Aztecs, they all shared a lot of the same architecture, clothing styles, diet, trade items, obsidian, animal pelts, bird feathers, etc. They shared a lot of the same rituals in terms of human sacrifice. They were all polytheistic with gods that very much resembled each other. So there's a lot of similarities there in terms of cultures and civilizations of Mexico, pre-Columbian, right? Cultures of Mexico before the era of Columbus, which is 1492, kind of onward. All right, in that same kind of time period, we have an economic ideology that's kind of dominating and dictating what all these European countries are doing, and it's known as mercantilism. And if you look at that word, you notice that it begins or ends with the suffix ism, right, which is an idea set or ideology. And you look at that root word, right, mercant, almost like you want to say merchant, right? This ideology essentially espoused the following beliefs. The government at the time, monarchy, should basically be the one to be kind of getting involved in the economy, grant licenses, grant monopolies, fund companies, fund charters and journeys, etc. And mercantilism basically taught that you should you should kind of hoard precious metals you were finding. Mercantilists were kind of obsessed with, gold, silver, bullion, right? The mother country should hoard these things. And I think most importantly, mercantilism as an economic ideology sought to have a favorable balance of trade. Mercantilism, according to mercantilist beliefs, you need, as a mother country, to have more exports than you do imports. You need to have what's called a favorable balance of trade. Mercantilists tended to view world trade as like a zero-sum game, right? Like we need to hoard everything. We're in constant competition with other states, so we need to export to them way more than they export to us. And essentially, the country that was kind of best at this, or the version of it, was England. This is why England's able to kind of win out. Mercantilism is also tied directly to colonialism, because if you're trying to export more than you're trying to import, it's really great that you have these colonies set up around the world who kind of mine natural resources for you, and give those natural resources back to you. You manufacture them, and then you get to sell them back to the same colonies who manufactured them for you. It's kind of this beautiful little cycle for the mother country. Mercantilism, I would argue, is also a version of what we can call protectionism, right? The goal is to protect the native market, the domestic market, right? You're looking at for yourself and yourself only. This is kind of the opposite of what seems to be a dominant trend in the world today in terms of globalization, right? Freeing the trade zone trade zones around the world, right? Not trying to get into trade wars with each other. Understanding that some countries are better more efficient than other countries in terms of producing goods and services, etc. Aiden, I know that was long-winded, but that's mercantilism in a nutshell, if you could believe it or not. Does that make sense? Just remember, favorable balance of trade, hoard gold and silver. Colonies are really important. You're welcome. All right, other content questions. I love that, by the way. You're an AP World History teacher when you've got somebody asking you about primary civilizations in the Americas, and then the very next question is on mercantilism of the 15th and 16th century. It's fantastic. Part of the reason I love this class so much. What else do we have, everybody? A couple big topics at the end: nationalism, industrialization, imperialism, second wave colonialism, right? Make sure we understand all that stuff. '21, we're at a peak right now. Heimler had 7,000. Can you give me a summary about Unit 6, please? Can you go over imperialism? Sure. So when we're talking about, and imperialism is Unit 6, I've got my guide out right here. Unit 6 technically is just like consequences of industrialization, right? So if you look at Unit 6, and guys, again, I think the best presentation to go over for this is the presentation called Revolutions and in Industrialization. Dang that Thai food. And the slideshow entitled European Imperialism. Imperialism is basically one country or state or kingdom exerting its influence, either economically, militarily, or politically, over another kind of less capable or weaker state. That's imperialism in a nutshell. There can be all different types of imperialism: military imperialism, political imperialism, economic imperialism, right? But the imperialism that we actually see kind of going on in period 6 is predominantly that of Western Europe and the United States. Historically, we have been in a imperialist power. I mean, think about this for a second. When our country first started, right, what were we? 13 small colonies on the eastern seaboard of the what we now call the continental United States, what we can refer back then loosely as the North American continent, right? So ask yourself one question: how does our country turn into what it turned into today, right? This is no trivial matter. This is a story of conquest and of settlement and of uprooting. This is a story of imperialism. The lands west of Appalachia, right? The lands west of the Ohio River Valley, right? Those lands were all occupied by Native Americans, indigenous groups, right? That's why somebody was talking about. Daniel Lynn says Mr. Shackles was talking about how during the times of imperialism, the natives got no say in all of this. For example, in the Berlin Conference. Yeah, exactly. And if you go back to that presentation on European imperialism, the Berlin Conference is literally 13 or 14 European powers literally sitting around a table, right? Talking about how they're going to carve up Africa, right? And I think that's imperialism in a nutshell, right? That's essentially what the United States is doing westward. What the United States is doing when we take the Philippines away and Puerto Rico and Guam and Cuba away from Spain in the Spanish-American War circa 1898, 1899, right? It's conquest, it's territorial acquisition, right? And if you look, I don't know in what context Mr. Shackles was talking about that, right? But the Berlin Conference, you need to ask yourself, why are so many European groups, why are they doing this? Like, what are their motives, right? And this would have been really good context for the DBQ question on the indigenous responses to state expansion. They're after two things. Remember this. Some of you might remember this from class. We talked about this in that first wave of imperialism. M&Ms. I'm not talking the candy. I'm not talking about those little sugar-coated chocolate morsels of goodness. I'm talking about what when I say M&Ms? What am I talking about? What are European countries after in the wake of industrialization? This is all Unit 6. Industrialization kind of kickstarts this whole process. What do you need if you're... Yes, Val Singer, excellent job. Markets and materials. You want raw materials so that you can ship them back to your mother country, produce whatever you're going to produce, and then sell it back to the markets that you now have because you're in control of whatever area you're in control of, right? It all comes down to markets and materials. It's this amazing, not amazing, it's detrimental, most cases, to the native indigenous societies. But that's essentially where industrialization comes into play here. You're able to greatly produce goods at a pace that's never been seen before. Well, your native population can only buy so much, so you've got to find a way to get your goods out to other markets, both foreign competitors and these indigenous spots that you've been taking over, right? And notice, who are the victims here? Who are the victims of European imperialization and European industrialization? Let me ask you a question. Is Japan a victim? Here's a really good point to make. Is Japan a victim of European imperialization? What do you remember that this was in that one of the last presentations I gave you, 19th century Japan and Russia. What happened to Japan? What route did they take? Do they fall under this realm of victims of Western Europe? We don't know. The answer is no. And if you're the closest to everybody who just kind of responded, Emily Hager, Meiji Restoration. Now I'm just gonna assume like, oh yeah, she knows what she's talking about. She's got it, okay? But essentially, Japan, yeah, they're isolated from the 1600s up until the 1850s when the United States comes a prime when it wants to open up isolated Japan. We basically threaten them with gunboats in Edo Harbor or Tokyo Harbor. I'm forgetting which one it was. Doesn't matter. But we kind of pry them open to Western influence. And instead of fighting that Western influence, the Japanese adapt and adopt to those Western customs and traditions and Enlightenment ideals and industrialization. And in this is seriously, it's insane, in less than 50 years, Japan industrializes on par with some of the greatest, most powerful European powers. And Japan becomes an imperialist power. Boom, look at document number 2 in that DBQ I gave you. Look at who that Korean source is complaining about. Notice how they're not complaining about Westerners. They're not complaining about Western Europe. They're complaining about the Japanese as imperial powers. And if you look at that time period on that document, I've got it like right here. It's 1894. Japanese are already industrialized. In fact, 1894, the Japanese are about to fight a major series of battles with the Chinese. This is known as the First Sino-Japanese War, Sino meaning Chinese. And the Japanese will wipe the floor with the Chinese because they're industrialism, okay? Because they're industrialized. So Japan is kind of this great exception. But if you look at the world, right? If you look at the world in roughly 1850, it is really the United States as an industrial power. Europe is kind of the center of industrialization, and everywhere else is just trying to play catch up. That's why, like, look at all those sources. Look at the victims in this presentation on European imperialism, right? All the African countries, India, Southeast Asia, China, which was just falling apart in the 19th. I don't mean to say that with a smile. It's just the 19th century ain't a good time to live in China. We'll just put it that way, okay? And hopefully you got that from covering that Chinese presentation. Not good. Opium Wars, Taiping Rebellion, Boxer Rebellion, and by 1911, the last Chinese dynasty, the Qing, are done, over with. So yeah, it's the kind of the peripheral countries there. If you're using a kind of a global historical term that people don't like to use as much anymore, but the center of the world seems to be the United States and Western Europe, and have taken over everybody else, maybe with that exception of Japan. But it's important to note here, all right? Listen, then we'll get to Dan Lynn's question. It's important to note that indigenous people didn't just say, come on in, take us over. We're ready to be taken over. We're not going to put up any resistance whatsoever. No, there was lots of resistance. There was running away. There was sabotage. There was out and out war. I mean, you name it. These indigenous groups did what they could to try to preserve their independence and autonomy, sometimes with success. Hello, document 3, Battle of Adwa. Okay. Other times with failure. Think about any Native American group in the United States ultimately being consumed by the United States. So oftentimes resistance did not go well. Okay. And I don't know, I'm going to make a really cheesy analogy here. For any of my Star Wars fans in here, think about the Galactic Empire in the original movies. What are they trying to do? They're literally the largest imperial power ever of all time. They're trying to take over the world. And who's fighting them? The rebels. The resistance. They're resisting imperialism. They're resisting it militarily, okay? But that's a kind of a great example of imperialism there, right? Maria, does that make sense? I hope that that wasn't going on too long, right? Industrialization and imperialism, right? Oh, okay, we got an Avatar reference in here. Cool. You're welcome, Mariah. Anything else you need to know, please let me know. We can go off on anything you guys want. But Dan, that's a great analogy. I appreciate that. I'm just not as familiar with Avatar as I'd like to be. But actually, in the movie Avatar, the movie directed by James Cameron, the forces from planet Earth, they're imperialist. They make humans out to be the bad imperialists. Trying to mine the unobtainium materials, right, to sell back home. Markets. Hello, Avatar. Have we seen Avatar? It's a great example of imperialism. Okay? Not First Airbender. Avatar, the movie with the big blue people, Fantastic. All right. So we got that. Let's see. We have a question here from Dan Lin. Did serfdom mainly end in Europe because of industrialization? I would say industrialization more so than starts the end of serfdom. Industrialization in Western Europe is kind of like the final nail in the coffin of an already collapsing system. You can make the argument that serfdom, you guys might remember this from class, serfdom was really being broken down by the end of the Crusades and by the end of like the Black Death, right? Remember in class we talked about the Black Death killing off so many peasants that it actually created great mobility and advantage in the working class peasants of the time, and serfdom kind of depended on very strict peasant labor. And with that system being hindered by so many people dying from the Black Death, circa 1350, that system, it begins to crumble at that point. And the Crusades, essentially, with literally lords, people dying over there, not coming back, claiming their land, and their lands kind of being consumed by local monarchies, also helps this rise in the age of absolutism and the rise of powerful monarchies in the 13, 14, 15, 16, 1700s as well. Okay. But industrialization does, I think, put a kind of a final nail in the coffin, at least in Western Europe. Do you guys remember where I said serfdom kind of lives on for another 100 years in the world? Where does serfdom kind of survive up until the late 1800s? Yes, Daniel Lynn. Nice, Aiden. Nice, John. Appreciate that. Mother Russia. It's terrible. Sorry. Yeah, in Russia. It survives in Russia. And that's why, with serfdom, there really is no impetus or motive to improve technology or anything along those lines, because you're reliant on that human labor of serfs. And so a lot of historians believe it's one of the reasons why Russia is so late to is so late to industrialize. You can make the argument, and I don't want to get into this because it's outside the scope of our class right now, but you can make the argument that even in the times of Joseph Stalin, the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and 50s of the Soviet Union, Russia is barely industrialized. In fact, that's one of Stalin's and Vladimir Lenin's plans, is to industrialize Russia rapidly with their 5-year plans. And so I think serfdom is kind of one of the culprits there in terms of delaying progress in Russia. Doesn't Mao industrial? Yeah. Hey Dan, same thing there. You can make a nice comparison. What Lenin and Stalin tried to do in Russia, Mao tries to do eventually in China as well. And if you're asking, what are they trying to rapidly industrialize their countries in an effort to compete with some of the capitalist global powers of the time, namely the United States and Western Europe. Nice. We got a little hammer sickle there for the Soviet Union. Communist Russia. Cool. What else we got? What else do we got? I'm trying to work on my Russian accent. It's not going well at all. Sorry, I'm so terrible. Anybody play those Kahoots? The Kahoots that I posted? No Kahoots. No questions. Everybody hates me. Sad face. What else do we have, guys? Anything in terms of content, presentations, back to the DBQ? I am here for you. Anybody? Yeah, Jaden. I mean, especially with everything that's happened in the last, few months in regards to COVID, definitely, I think, kind of sped this up. Um, and that's generally always the case. You guys will blink, and you'll be seniors ready to graduate. I'm telling you, soak it up while you can because this does not last long. I know sometimes while you're in it, it may seem like it's dragging and whatnot, but the 4 years in high school goes by very, very, very quick. And I don't know if you guys remember me talking about this in the summer session, but just always make sure that you're living by this idea of high school as a stepping stone. While you're here for the 4 short years, try to soak up everything you can from your guidance counselors, teachers, the classes you take, the clubs and extracurriculars and sports and organizations that you're a part of. Never in your life again will you be given this environment where literally everybody wants you to succeed, right? And we're all here for you. So just make sure you take advantage of it because it goes by very quick. You're going to be in the hallway next year, like passing J4, being like, oh, that guy was my history teacher last year. Yeah, I kind of remember. Oh, look at that terrible haircut. Yeah, now it's coming back to me. And then you're going to go on to like your new history class. So it does go by very quick. No, Dan, no live game of Kahoot over. I don't know what Discord is. And if you want to play Kahoot, definitely play it yourself and let me know how you did. I'll be up thinking about you guys. But unfortunately, no live Kahoots. But the 3 I posted, units 4, 5, and 6, they're very good. They're long, but they're very good. I promise. What is that? What is that? What is it supposed to be? Oh, well, that was good, man. That's cool. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Okay. All right. I think we've hit a point here where, if we're talking about Nate's terrible drawings, then we know it's time to sign off. Do me a favor, guys. Okay. I've got 18 of you guys in here right now. We've been at this for a little over an hour. You've asked some really great questions. You already know how I feel about you guys. I think I was really complimentary in all of the notes that I reviewed in terms of the Google Classroom assignments. I think you're all extremely capable. You've had somebody teaching you this entire year who's graded the exams before, who's been teaching this class for roughly 6 years now. The presentations I've given you are chock full of all of the content that you need to be successful on this exam. You have been in good hands, okay? Some of you, maybe it took you a while to get turned on to the class this year, to get ready and serious about this. That's okay, all right? The effort that everybody in this chat has made is very much appreciated. This situation that you're currently facing right now of taking an online test, guys, one word comes to mind. It's unprecedented, okay? So no matter what, just let all that fear, anxiety, and stress go right out the window, okay? Because this year, as far as I'm concerned, has a little asterisk next to it. This will be the year of COVID moving forward in AP testing and grading and top 10 ranks and in all of that stuff. So just do your best. You are more than capable, guys. You are sitting back when we were in the classroom, you were sitting in those seats for a reason. Somewhere at some point, somebody saw something in you that made them think, all right, this person's perfect for ECA or AP World History. Put the frustrations aside, concentrate, get your mind right, and you will do well on this exam. Okay? I promise you that. Beg, scrape, steal as many points as you possibly can and just give it your all. I want you to walk out of, I was going to say the exam room. I want you to get up from your computer chair tomorrow, okay? And just make sure that you're fully confident that you gave 100% of your best effort. Because after this, we're coasting. There's no more presentations, no more assignments. And I can't explain to you the feeling that most of my kids get every year when they finish the exam. It's like, whoa, what an accomplishment that was. Like, I remember being in the summer session freaking out about this class, and now the exam's over. I've got an AP class under my belt as a freshman, and it doesn't matter how I did on that exam, right? Because no exam characterizes you for the rest of your life. You need to understand that. Okay, you've all made tremendous growth and progress, and maybe you're not happy with where you're at, but as long as you've seen progress and growth this year, kudos to you. Job well done, mission accomplished. Okay, I wish you guys nothing but the best of luck tomorrow. I am here for you in the morning. I'm going to be here for the next couple hours. If you want to email me, if you want to do some Zooming later on, I do have to put my daughter down to bed right now. Okay, but I am here for you. I believe you guys. I love you guys. I miss you so much. These last few months definitely have been tough for everybody. But again, if I could do anything in the next, 14, 15 hours, you just please let me know. Say the word, and I'm at your beck and call. Okay, thank you for joining this chat tonight. I hope you guys get some sleep, nice breakfast in the morning, and then maybe join me for a call at some point, and then get ready. Focus. You're going to do really well on this thing. You will crush this. Okay? Have a great night, everybody. Thanks again.